Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, Burnout and Alcohol Coach and Wellness Expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hello, it's me. I'm back again with another solo podcast. Today I'm going to talk about how to worry less. And the reason I chose this topic for today is because I have been talking about this in the groups I coach in and in my private practice now for the last couple of weeks. It's just, for whatever reason, it's been a recurrent theme. And it just felt like a really great sort of insular topic to deal with on a podcast episode. And I know that there's a lot of worry and a lot of anxiety happening right now as we hopefully are nearing the end of the pandemic and reintegrating ourselves into a more social world. And for a number of my alcohol clients, for example, this poses lots of increased worry and anxiety around their ability to stay alcohol free, which is what they want for themselves. And you know, we have worries around what the future is going to look like and all of that. So feels like a good topic, and I'm going to deal with that in a second. I've got 5 kind of my top strategies around managing worry better. I do want to be really clear. I am obviously not a therapist, a psychologist. I am not in any way suggesting that if you're getting support around anxiety from a medical practitioner, you're taking medication for anxiety, that this is somehow a replacement set of tools. And, you know, that's not what I'm about. This is just a set of behavioral tools or habits, ways of thinking, little strategies and tips that can help to manage worry. And so I think they work really well in complement with other types of therapies and support. So before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the free 5-day challenge that Emily Lynn Paulson and I are launching at the beginning of May. If you haven't heard about that yet, you can go get the details and register at wendymccallum.com/challenge. It is a repeat of the 5-day challenge that we ran at the beginning of January, and it is all about how to start shifting your relationship with alcohol permanently. And the one that we did in January was phenomenal. I mean, we were blown away at the hundreds and hundreds of women who registered for this program. We absolutely loved doing it. So when I say repeat, it's not actually a repeat. Each day is a fresh session. So it's done live. We will be dealing with, similar themes and information, but it's all going to be presented fresh. And we will be dealing with your questions, which will all be probably new questions in the last 30 minutes of each live. So basically the way it works is there is a live every day from May 2nd to May 6th. Just going to confirm I've got those dates right. Monday, May 2nd, and it runs straight through till Friday. And every day at the same time of day, we run a live Zoom call. The first half an hour is Emily and I doing some coaching and teaching and just providing you with just a whole new way of looking at this problem that is your relationship with alcohol, and just giving you, I think, what I know to be the keys to actually making a change this time, instead of just white knuckling your way through a break only to return to the same habits that you have, found yourself judging and disliking in the past. So we had great reviews for this free challenge, and we just wanted to do it again. So if you've done it before, you can sign up again and do it one more time. We are happy to have you there. The 5 days themselves are, I think, really powerful. And the response that we got from the women who participated was, these 5 days have completely changed my way of thinking about this topic. So again, it's completely free. It's called the 5-Day Rewind Challenge. It's May 2nd to 6th. You can go register at wendymccallum.com/challenge, hosted by myself and Emily Lynn Paulson, who is another certified This Naked Mind coach, a She Recovers coach, a TEDx speaker, an incredible author, and one of my favorite people. And we co-coach the Rewind program together, which is our 6-week coaching program. But this is kind of the free 5-day rewind challenge, we call it. So no strings, no need to purchase anything else. We would just love to see your faces in this group. If you can't attend live, we get it. The majority of people, as I said, we have hundreds and hundreds of people who register for this thing, and we have around 100 people every day on the calls. And, most people are watching the replays, which we send out every day. But you need to be registered for the event in order to access the replays. So again, wendymccallum.com/challenge. Love to see you there. Okay, let's talk about how to worry less. How can we manage anxiety and worry with some actual practical tools and strategies? I have a couple of base practices that I'm going to talk about. So these are more like what we call seeds. So in this Naked Mind approach to making change, we talk about 2 different types of tools. The seeds, which are the tools that, really it's like a seed, you plant it, you nurture it, you water it, you go back to it, you practice it, you cultivate it, you take care of it, and eventually it bears fruit, and you're able to see that fruit is just really incredibly helpful in helping you make whatever the changes you're trying to make. So we have these seed type tools. Takes longer to see the payoff from them. They're more like base habits, as I like to call them. So daily practices that, we kind of stack like building blocks to build a base for resiliency. And then we also have what we call switches, which are tools that you can use in the actual moment to shift the way your brain is thinking. And I want to talk about a couple of seed type tools today around managing worry. And then I want to talk about some switch type tools that you can use in the moment when you feel yourself kind of spinning out, which happens to me all the time. Where I just feel like I am going way too far down the road of what might happen, getting really worked up about the possible bad ways this thing could go. So I'm going to give you some tools for using in the actual moment that you're feeling that way, but also start by talking about some really helpful, regular daily practices that you can start incorporating in your life that are going to make it a little bit less likely that your brain spins completely out of control, and also give you a better chance of noticing that that's happening and actually putting the brakes on it and doing a bit of a reset by using some of the switches we're going to talk about in a second. So here are the 2 seeds that I want to talk about today. You guys have heard me talk about these in other podcast episodes, but I want to talk about them today and directly connect them to worry, to how much we worry, and how these can help us to manage worry better. So the first one is meditation, and the second one is gratitude. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about how to meditate or how to practice gratitude. I'm just going to summarize them. There are 2 podcasts where I deal with both of these topics in the archives. So if you go back and you search, you will see that there was one episode where I talked exclusively about gratitude, how incredibly powerful gratitude has been for me as a practice, something that I poo-pooed in the early days, thought was, reserved for kind of fancy women like Oprah and other people who maybe just had too much time on their hands, but was not something that would ever practically work for me. But when I actually did some research around it, what I realized was there's tons of science connected to gratitude, and it actually makes total sense to me how a really regular practice of gratitude can help rewire our brains to be more present in the moment, which is really important when it comes to managing worry. So gratitude is one thing I'm going to talk about, and also meditation. And again, there are 2 past episodes of this podcast that you can go listen to that will give you the details on. I'm not a meditation expert by any means, but just I think the very basic layperson's approach to simple meditation practice in a really practical way that will actually work with your real life, that doesn't take hours of your time and involve you, chanting and learning a whole bunch of new stuff. Just a really simple way to start getting more mindful. Okay. Let's talk about each of these two things quickly and what the connection is to worrying less. So we'll start with meditation. So meditation, all different types of meditation out there. It's a form of mindfulness. I always say the simplest way for me when I'm talking about meditation, for what I'm talking about, is really just giving your body an opportunity to be still and then giving your brain an opportunity to practice being still, which your brain is not going to be very good at. It's going to probably be terrible at this right out of the gate, just like mine was. And frankly, mine still is a lot of the time. We have this monkey brain thing going on where our brains are all over the place. That's totally normal. But what we want to do is we want to give our brain a chance to kind of get better and better at noticing all of these thoughts that it's having all the time, and noticing that a lot of those thoughts are about things that aren't actually happening right now, and pulling itself back to the present moment and what is actually going on in the moment that we're in. And the way to start working on doing that is through a simple practice of meditation. Stillness, mindfulness, call it what you want. It's about sitting still somewhere and focusing in on some kind of an anchor, so something that keeps you grounded in the moment. And there are so many different things you can use. You can use a guided meditation where you're actually listening to somebody's voice and that's your anchor. You can use your breath. You can just pay attention to the breath coming in and out of your body and how that feels. You can listen to something that you find really calming and grounding. So for me, sometimes if I'm at the beach, I'll close my eyes, I'll listen to the waves. That will be my anchor. Or if I'm not at the beach, which is most of the time, I'll listen to a soundtrack of the waves on the beach, and that's what I focus in on. And then what you do is you sit still for a period of time. I recommend you start with 5 minutes, and you notice when you are having thoughts that are not about whatever the anchor is that you're trying to stay focused on. So, for example, you might think to yourself, I wonder how long I've been doing this. Feels like I've been doing this for at least 2 minutes, but I don't know, maybe it hasn't been that long. You notice that you're having that thought, and then you come back to paying attention to your breath or to the meditation you're listening to. Or if you're like me, you might find yourself planning an entire trip to Cuba with your family, and realize that the entire 5 minutes have gone by and you haven't really been focusing on the anchor at all. That's okay. If that happens, the noticing that that's happening is really the most important thing. And then the coming back to your breath or whatever the anchor is. What you're doing effectively, it's like a muscle. You're just giving your brain a chance to exercise this new skill of noticing when it's thinking about things, paying attention to that, and then coming back to the present moment. And the more you do that, the better your brain gets at it. The better you get at noticing, the better you get at coming back to the present moment, maybe a little bit faster. As I said, you're still going to have probably meditation sessions where it feels like you really didn't accomplish anything when it came to focusing on the present moment, and that you were, spinning off into all of this other thought the entire time. That's okay too. I always say, at the very least, even if it feels like you didn't exercise your brain at all in the way that you wanted to, you sent the message to your body and your brain that you are worth sitting still for 5 minutes for. And for most busy women, that in itself is incredibly valuable. So why does this work to help us manage worry better or worry less? It's because the better our brain gets at being in the moment, the less time it's spending in the future. And the future is where worry lives, right? So anxiety and worry live in the future. It's, if you think about anything you've been anxious or been worrying about, it's all about, how's this going to go? How's this going to turn out? What's going to happen next? What if this goes wrong? Right? Which is us trying to predict out a set of circumstances or events that have not happened yet. If we can train our brains to get better at being in the moment that it's actually in right now, we are going to spend less time off in the future, which is where that worry resides, if that makes sense. So this is an incredibly powerful seed tool, right? A tool that you practice regularly. You don't have to do it every single day, but it would be great if you got into the habit of doing it 5-6 times a week for 5 minutes at a time. And you can obviously increase the length of that session if it feels good. I find the first 5 minutes of meditation, I'm usually all over the place. It takes me about 5 minutes to just calm down, to be honest. And then I really enjoy the next 5 or 10 minutes that I'm just kind of zoning out. I find it very, very relaxing. I always feel great afterwards. And it has definitely led to an overall increased awareness for me as to when I am off in the future worrying about things, which makes it easier for me to then apply some of the tools we're going to be talking about later on in this podcast episode. So the first seed tool is meditation. The second is gratitude. Again, go back and listen to the full episode on gratitude, but here's what you really need to know about gratitude. The reason why it probably hasn't worked for you in the past is because you have been far too general with the gratitude you've been expressing. This is one of the most important things I learned when I started spending some time researching gratitude and why it works, with the kind of the neurosciences behind it, is that you have to get incredibly specific with gratitude in order for it to be really powerful. So the more specific you are, and the good news in this is that it means we're really talking about focusing in on the really little things that are happening during the day. The more specific we get about things that are happening that we are grateful for, the more likely we are to actually start reprogramming our brain to be in the present moment, which is the piece that's really important when we're talking about reducing worry or managing worry better. Exactly the same theory as what I was just talking about around meditation. But also, what gratitude does is help our brains notice the good things that are happening in the present moment that we're in. Okay, so when I'm talking about specific gratitude, here's the difference. Okay, a lot of people, when they're writing down things that they're grateful for, first of all, they do it at the end of the day. So they're trying to remember things that happened during the day, which is harder. I think gratitude often in the beginning anyway works better when you have the ability to write it down when you notice it. So this can be as simple as a note on your phone. So just a note that's called gratitude. You go in there, you write down the thing when it happens. I think at the end of the day, we're often trying to reconstruct, and this is when we fall into the trap of getting super general because it's easier, right? So things like, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my house, I'm grateful for my job, I'm grateful for my health. Those are all very general expressions of gratitude, not directly connected to a specific event that happened during your day. It needs to be specific because remember, we're trying to train our brain to actually notice the things that are happening right in front of us. So I'm grateful for my house or my job is not directly connected to an actual set of circumstances we have experienced that day, something that we've noticed in front of us. But if I was to say, I'm grateful for the fact that I just had the opportunity to record a podcast where I talked about the impact that gratitude and meditation have had on my level of worry, that is a very specific statement of gratitude associated with events that are actually happening right now that are connected to my job, but are just far more detailed and specific and current. So you want to get really specific with it. Now, it doesn't have to be earth-shattering and huge. People get caught up with the word gratitude, and I always say, like, if gratitude is not a word that resonates with you, if it feels kind of goofy and too big, then just look for things that make you feel good or are kind of cool that happen. So it could be like yesterday, I was, honestly, can't even remember exactly where I was. I stepped outside, I was with someone else, and I know where I was. I was at the tennis center. I went to watch a tennis match, and I stepped outside of the car on my way into the tennis match, and I heard the bird that signals the beginning of spring. And every year I hear that bird, and every year I have specific gratitude for the fact that I heard that bird in that moment because it reminds me that winter will end. We're still in the tail end of winter here. That's an example of really specific gratitude, right? It can be so small. I mean, when I first started practicing gratitude, it was very hard for me. It was a very, very tough time in my life. It was a conscious decision to start working on gratitude because my life circumstances were pretty tough at the time. My dad was dying, and we were trying to support him and my mom through the last year of his life. And life felt bleak. I always say, like, some days the thing I was grateful for was the fact that someone remembered to buy milk for my coffee. We are not talking about big stuff here. We're talking about really little stuff. The better you get at this, getting really specific and then writing the thing down. Why does writing it down matter? Writing it down matters because it records it differently in our brain if we write it down. So it's like another level of filing this away. What we want is for our brain to be able to find this new pathway, right? And so we want to reinforce it. And the writing it down reinforces it and helps with creating the new neural pathway. And the new neural pathway is, I try to spend time in the present moment because that's where all the good stuff happens and I don't want to miss it. That's my new neural pathway. And I've been working on that one now for the last 4.5 years or so. And I would say it's very well ingrained. It's very deep in my brain, which is why I noticed the songbird yesterday, right? Which is why I noticed the fact that my son called me. I was at a party on Friday night. I was out too late. My son called to make sure we were okay because we never stay out late. My 18-year-old was actually checking on us. And I had tremendous gratitude for that, for the fact that he is that kind of a kid, that he noticed. And it was just really kind of a cool moment. So gratitude also helps program our brain to be in the present moment more often. And again, the present moment is where everything's going okay, right? The worry and the anxiety is about the future that hasn't happened yet. And so the better we get at being in the present moment, the less time we spend off in the future, which means we can help manage the amount of worry that is in our lives. So those are the 2 seeds. Gratitude and meditation. You're going to want to practice gratitude in a written form for about a month minimum. So you're going to want to write down 3 at least specific things that you're grateful for every day for a month. Just try it. I cannot tell you how many people I've worked with. This has been a game changer for them. It's free and it takes about 2 minutes a day. So it's a no-brainer. So please try it if you haven't tried it yet. But you do need to be really specific and you do need to write it down at least for the first 30 days or so. What you're going to notice is that as the weeks go on, this gets easier and easier and you start noticing things without having to look for them. So you'll just see something and notice it and think, oh, that's cool. I can put that on my gratitude list. I'm thankful for that today. And it will get easier. And eventually, if you want, you can stop writing it down. Some people love writing it down. It's a great record to go back to and look at. I have a beautiful gratitude list from that year that I started practicing gratitude when my dad was dying, because the majority of the things on that list are related to experiences with my dad. They have something to do with my dad, and that's really cool to be able to go back and look at that now that he's not with us anymore. So 2 seeds, meditation and gratitude. Now I have 3 simple little tools, strategies you can use in the moment when you're feeling the worry. So when you have that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I feel this like tightness in my chest, however that presents for you, pay attention to that. Usually the emotions of worry and anxiety kind of show up as a tightness and a stress. We'll often lift our shoulders and just find ourselves feeling really tense. That's certainly how it feels for me. First question to ask yourself, this is kind of a little cheat sheet. Could I care less? This is the first one. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but it's one of my favorites and it's worth coming back to. Could I care less? Probably 4 of the most powerful words out there for busy women. Is this actually something that I need to be freaking out about? What would happen if I made the conscious choice to care less about the outcome here? What if I just decided to let this thing go and move on? Now, this is probably not going to work for really big, important things, but it is amazing how many things we get ourselves completely worked up into a lather about that actually don't matter that much. And I know that when I was back in kind of my days of overwhelm and stress and burnout, I was just in the habit of this, of just doing this. In fact, Sarah Bailey and I have talked about this on a podcast before, and she says that basically our brains get wired for this when we're in chronic stress. We're basically now programmed to respond at a very high level to everything that happens in our lives. So if you're feeling like this is you and you're just winging out all the time and stressed about everything, start asking yourself, could I care less? I always use the examples of the towels, so I'm going to use them again. This is my constant example here because I think it resonates with almost every mother out there. For years and years and years, I freaked out every single morning about the fact that my kids left their wet towels on the floor, either behind their doors or on the floor of the bathroom. And I would yell about it and get them to come up and hang the towels up. And, I think this went on for probably 3-4 years when they were young, let's say like elementary school, beginning of middle school. And it would usually lead to somebody getting upset with me. And then it would also take up time. And so our mornings were rushed already. And then very often the morning would end with like me screaming at the kids, they're going to be late for the bus, and them running out the door with me literally screaming out the window at them to get on the bus. So it was a very stressed out morning, and everyone was really kind of cranky and upset. I don't know why this happened, but really it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. One morning I was about to yell, and I thought to myself, what if I just chose to not yell? What would happen here? How might my morning change if I just hung up these bloody towels and stopped yelling at them for it? Could I choose to care less about the towels on the floor? And I did, like an experiment. I hung the towels up. And guess what? The rest of the morning was so much better. So much better, so much calmer. I started my workday feeling better. I felt better in terms of how I was parenting. Everything felt better. The only thing that didn't feel great is that I knew that my kids didn't learn anything about the fact that you need to hang a towel up or it gets mildewy and gross. But what I realized was that wasn't working anyway. If it had been working, then they wouldn't be leaving the towels on the floor anymore. So that's a really simple example of the could I care less thing. I have been picking up the towels now since then. In fact, I picked them up this morning and thought to myself, I have to use this example when I record this podcast because I'm still doing it. I still just pick them up. My kids someday will learn this lesson for themselves. When they're gone, those towels are going to go to the animal shelter or wherever I can, usefully donate them, but I won't be using them anymore because they don't smell great. But that's my kids' problem because they're the ones who use them. And they'll have to buy their own towels, and they will learn this lesson when they have to replace their own towels that smell bad. But I'm not going to spend a whole lot of my time and energy and anxiety on the towel issue anymore. I'm choosing to care less about that. Now, I do this all the time. That's just one example, but I do this all the time. Could I choose to care less? I am stuck in traffic. Could I choose to care less? Yes, I could choose to care less. There's nothing I can do about this. I'm just going to let this go. I will, send a little voice message to let people know I might be a few minutes late, and then I'm just going to enjoy the rest of my drive because there's nothing I can do about this. I also do it a lot around my other behavior with my kids. So with teenagers, I found it's been really helpful in the teenage years, like when someone is being really mouthy or has, made a questionable decision. Could I care less? Could I just choose to care less in this moment? Because, I always play the tape forward. What's this going to lead to? Where's this going to go? Is it worth it? And what happens if I care less? So my first little tip around worry, could I care less? It works. You'd be surprised at how often it works. Now, sometimes it doesn't. So here are a couple other strategies. My second most favorite question around worry is what's wrong with now? So it's another forward question I love. What's wrong with now? So what you're doing in that moment is asking yourself, you're bringing yourself back to the present moment, right? It's a grounding question. What's wrong with right now? And the truth is, if you're able to ask that question, there's probably nothing wrong with right now. So you've been spinning off into a future place where you can't control the outcome. You can't predict how it's going to go. It's futile. It's causing you stress. Your cortisol's up. What's wrong with right now? Oh, nothing. Everything's okay. Actually, things are going pretty well. I'm sitting here worrying. So, I've obviously I'm safe, I'm okay. And then, everyone around me is actually okay in this moment. I'm not dying, I'm alive, everything's okay. Can be really, really helpful. Sounds really trite, but it's actually incredibly powerful to just ask yourself, what is wrong with right now? Nothing. Last thing I want to share with you is my worst case scenario. This is a coaching exercise I do sometimes. When people are really stressed out about something, I'll say, okay, what's the fear here? What are you worried about? What are you afraid of? And I'll get them to articulate the fear and write it down. And then I'll say, okay, what if that happens? What if that happens? Play that tape forward. What if it happens? What then? And they will work through the worst case scenario and tell me how they're going to handle it. Okay, well, if that happens, then I guess we'll deal with it together and we'll figure it out. And here are some of the things we could do if that happened, right? Working through the worst case scenario takes away some of the unknown. And the unknown is where the fear is, right? The anxiety and the worry is about how is this going to go? I don't know. I don't know, and I'm afraid because I don't know. So worst case scenario helps you work through that. Of course, it's the worst case scenario. It's not going to happen. But knowing that you have a plan and that you would be able to handle the worst case scenario is really helpful in a lot of cases. So worst case scenario is my last tip. So let me summarize those. Just ideas and strategies you can start practicing around worry to try to manage worry better in your life. First of all, 2 seeds, meditation practice and a gratitude practice. Both can be fairly simple, 5 minutes or less for each of them a day. Can make an absolutely huge difference when it comes to your brain's ability to actually be in the moment that it's in, which is where everything is okay, right? We just talked about what's wrong with now. Probably nothing, right? The more time you spend in a moment where nothing is going wrong, the less worry that you're going to have. So gratitude and meditation. And then 3 questions. Could I care less? What would happen? What if I experiment with that? What's wrong with now? Probably absolutely nothing. Everybody's probably okay. That can be really helpful just to remind yourself of that. And what's the worst case scenario? And so what? What would that mean? How would I manage that? So that is a topic I have been talking about a lot in recent weeks with my clients that I thought I would share with you guys. Just a reminder about the 5-day rewind challenge that I talked about at the beginning of the podcast episode. It is free. It is a way for you to rewind your relationship with alcohol back to a time before the world told you needed alcohol to have fun. Do you remember that time? I do. When I didn't need it, when it wasn't part of all of the things, when I wasn't thinking to myself at the end of the day, oh man, it's going to be nice to have a glass of wine tonight. Or when I wasn't like looking around when I got to the restaurant for the wine list or, the whatever the fanciest cocktail was I could get for myself, to a time when I never really thought about alcohol. And honestly, for me, it was like university. I mean, I drank on the weekends with my buddies, kind of in a bingey way, like most kids do, I think, in college. It was not great, but at the same time, it wasn't consuming my thoughts at any moments during the week. I was never thinking about alcohol. I wasn't using it as a coping mechanism. I wasn't using it as a way to escape or numb. It was just a social drug that I took with other people. And then it started to become problematic. And so what we want to do is help you get back to that place where it's small and irrelevant in your life, where it's not running the show, where you're not thinking about it all the time. And in order to do that, you need to try something completely different. And the way to find out what that different is to just join us for the free 5-day rewind challenge. Again, every day we have a session. It's live. You can attend live, or you can wait and watch the recorded replay if you can't attend live, but you can't get the recorded replays or access to the live calls unless you register. And we would love to see you there. So I hope everybody has a great day, and I hope that you get a chance to practice some of these strategies around managing your worry better, because wouldn't it be nice if we just worried a little less? Have a great week, everyone.
Are you drinking more than you'd like, but finding it hard to cut back? I've got some great news. My popular 5-day rewind challenge is starting again very soon. This 5-day challenge is the circuit breaker you've been looking for to start making alcohol small and irrelevant in your life. Join us and learn a little more about why you drink and what life might be like if you drank a little less. Whether this is the first time you've gotten curious about alcohol or something you've been struggling with for years, this no-strings, completely free challenge is for you. Join us every day for 5 days to learn the game-changing mindset shifts to drinking less without feeling deprived. Recorded replays are available to registered participants only. Get the details and register now at wendymccallum.com/challenge. That's WENDYMCCALLUM.com/challenge.